Soon after, ruining city. Suchanga descended from the sky, landed lightly, and then tiptoed into the hut. At this time, Yi Qingyao was still sleeping deeply like Feng Kai, and a soft hum came out of her mouth, as if she was murmuring. This time I went out, I got a total of 2 chances. The first is the inheritance of the immortal king's body and life's gain, and the second chance is this great Saint Heart vein. Suchanga took stock of the gains from this outing, and slowly touched the room of the beautiful master. That old immortal king's chance inheritance is certainly terrifying, but the most terrifying thing is this great Saint Heart vein, and I don't know what terrifying treasures that raise the upper limit will be brushed back when this heart pulse is sent. Suchanga was very concerned about this. He walked to the end of the bed and called, "Master?" "Huh?" Yi Qingyao woke up slowly, chuckled, and said suspiciously, "It's so late, didn't you sleep?" Suchanga smiled and said, "I have a gift for you." "Send me again?" Yi Qingyao looked around, feeling that it was so late. What kind of gift was to be given at night? Between thoughts, Suchanga had already taken out a small box and said, "Master, I just went out for a spin and found this in an inconspicuous place. It seems to be some kind of heart." Yi Qingyao didn't care about it, and felt that it should be similar to the previous treasure, but when he opened it, he was so frightened that his hands softened, and he almost dropped the jade box on the ground, and he caught it in a hurry. "This? Apprentice, do you know what this is?" Her breathing suddenly became rapid. She lowered her voice countless times, and asked in a low voice. Suchanga was naturally clear, but he still said, "Please ask Master to solve the confusion." Yi Qingyao was about to say, but when the words came to his lips, he suddenly remembered something, and let out a happy bitter smile, and said, "That's it. Or don't say it, it's easy to scare you when you say it. Alas, my purple mansion-level power is almost startled, not to mention you. Tonight I estimate that I will be excited because of this thing and can't sleep anymore." Obtaining the great Saint Heart vein, she felt her heart pounding faster in her body, and her breathing was rapid. This treasure was too valuable, she only felt like a dream, unbelievable. Suchanga understood the meaning of her words, but did not say anything, and smiled. "Master, who of us two is intimidated?" He only thought about it in his heart and didn't say it. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2AA54Z8B. Apprentice, I suddenly understood that you should be a person favored by destiny, or a child of luck. Treasures are constant, and you can pick up treasures wherever you go. Yi Qingyao seemed to understand something at this time, and said with a smile. Treating this, Suchanga also smiled and nodded, maybe. Gee, Master Venerable actually learned to make up his brain. By the way, and this? He took out another storage ring and placed it in the palm of the beautiful Master's hand, saying, "This was found with that box, you see." Yi Qingyao opened it and took a look, suddenly covered her mouth, and said in a lost voice, This is the family base of an entire immortal king." With her eyes, she can see at a glance that this is all the family background of an immortal king: powerhouse, weapon elixir, inheritance exercises, Tao weapon, divine weapons, each of which is modeled and ancient, thick and vicissitudes. There are even some Tao weapons that still have the blood of the strong left on them. This is an immortal king who kills without blinking. The treasures and lifelong exercises he has earned all his life of struggle are all here. Phew! Yi Qingyao felt that she was about to faint with happiness, dazzling. At a glance, there were many inheritances, and there were many treasures. She just struggled in her life and could not get so much. This apprentice, will the things you send tonight be too expensive? Are you sure you want to send me? Incredible words came out of her mouth. Suchanga didn't even think about it, and nodded directly. Sure, when I entered the sect, you raised me for 4 years, and now I should naturally repay you. Suddenly, Yi Qingyao burst into tears. In the melting mood, tears flowed. The nose was sour, and I didn't know what to say. Throw in Qiong Yao, repay it with Mu Tao, apprentice him. What a good man. She stretched out a pair of pink and white jade hands and hugged Suchanga, holding him like this, hugging him tightly. And at this time, in Suchanga's mind, the system's compensation arrived. Ding, you sent out. Ding. You sent a great Saint Heart vein, and the tens of billions of subsidies took effect, triggering an excess critical attack. This excess critical attack multiplier, 1.13 million times. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Supreme Dragon Vein. Huh? Suchanga's heart jumped. Supreme. Unexpectedly, the Supreme appeared. Isn't this a super supreme treasure that can raise the upper limit to the supreme level? Look immediately into the system space. I saw a fluorescent golden light cluster emerging in that chaotic space, and the appearance of the light mass was wrapped in a hazy mist, exuding a brilliant and beautiful color, and the naked eye could not see through what was inside. Even if the divine sense swept away, it could not be recognized. Treasure. It must be a super treasure. Suchanga blurted out. The system sounds. Supreme Dragon Vein, in the great world of recklessness, a Terran Supreme came out of the great ruin. He was born for cultivation, came to kill and rob. And there was a Supreme Dragon Vein in his body. If you absorb it, you can be promoted to the supreme position. Changa's heart was shocked, and he was overjoyed. Really? 1,000 spirit stones in exchange for the Supreme Dragon Vein, this wave really made a lot of money. And the next moment, the system's Immortal King subsidy also arrived on time. Ding. You sent the Immortal King inheritance, which contains more than 372 kinds of body refining exercises, 263 kinds of killing extreme moves, and 4,823 other inheritances, and tens of billions of subsidies take effect, triggering an excessive critical attack. This excess critical attack multiplier, 1.14 million times. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Heaven-level divine weapon stop soldier. Heaven-level divine weapon killing spear. 9 turn soul returning pill *1000. Taiku devouring technique. Qiankuan thunder slash. Mixed element grade Dao instrument Yagi Dao treasure mirror. There were a lot of things sent out this time, and Suchanga's mind kept ringing. And it took a lot of time to stop ringing a cup of tea. Look at system space again. I saw that there were thousands of more weapons there. The long blade was sharp, the edge was blazing, and there were countless pills, and as for the inheritance, there was a primeval era devouring technique. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2AA54Z8B. In addition, another mixed element level Daoist. Although precious, these Suchanga just took a brief look and focused on the Supreme Dragon Vein. Fusion. Merge now. Everything else can be put away, only this one must be integrated immediately. Thinking of this, he immediately raised his feet and prepared to go out. But when he suddenly came back to his senses, he was being held by the beautiful master. How to get out? Sensing that his footsteps seemed to be leaving, Yi Qingyao hugged him. tighter, spitting out pandan in his mouth, and said, "Don't go, stay with me." For a while. Suchanga has never been a hypocritical person, so he stayed with her for a while. He hugged Yi Qingyao in turn and held her tightly in his arms. Time passed slowly, and in a blink of an eye, it arrived at the fourth change. Everything is silent, and the lights are out. Although Yi Qingyao was excited, she fell asleep in Suchanga's warm embrace. Originally she just wanted to squint a little, but this embrace was like a warm hometown, making people's hearts calm, and she accidentally fell asleep. Suchanga gently placed her on the bed, left a kiss on her white and crystal pretty face, then covered the quilt and tiptoed out. When he arrived at the outside world, his mind moved, flew up to the void, and took out the glowing golden light mass. Flick your sleeves. Buzz. The divine mist of the glow light group was faded, and the mysteries of the contents were revealed. In an instant, the vitality of heaven and earth rioted, and endless earth, water, wind and fire gushed out, like the sound of rolling thunder roaring from the depths of the heavenly dome, and the clouds turned into a terrifying sea of thunder in an instant. The airflow exploded, and the lightning and thunder. The supreme treasure was born, and heaven and earth sympathized, giving birth to infinite visions. Suchanga fixed his eyes on it, and saw a heart vein blooming with brilliant golden rays appearing. The surface was engraved with infinite light, all kinds of mysterious patterns were intertwined, runes, rays, and Tao rhymes. The mysterious aura fluctuations are endless, the endless rules and rhymes flow. And the layers of Rui Qi are like divine light, flowing on the surface of the heart, and the mystery is to the extreme. There is also a kind of surging coercion, like a god overflowing, like a big river and a big wave. One wave is not flat, one wave is rising, swallowing mountains and rivers, pushing in all directions. At this time, many people on the ground below had already fallen asleep, but sensing this breath, they all sat up in shock, walked out of the house, and looked up at the sky. Above the void, Suchanga did not make any unnecessary movements, held this supreme dragon vein, and pressed it into his chest without hesitation. Buzz. In an instant, he directly felt a hot stream like deep magma entering his body, and the next moment his body was refreshed, the blood and body skin became transparent and red, and the hot heat flow in the body was like a huge wave surging, spreading to all parts of the body, and pouring into the limbs and bones. A little later, with a bang, it was like a thunder in the sky, and it seemed to explode like a storm on the ground, and a magnificent and incomparable momentum rose up straight to Jiuxiao Tianyu, and an extremely vast divine thought swept across the vast earth, sweeping out inch by inch, spreading in all directions. Supreme Dragon Vein, fused successfully. At the same time as the fusion was completed, in the depths of the heavenly dome, a loud sound sounded. Jia. Daoyin, tremble again. P.S. A love letter sent by Crab Yuashu. This voice just rang. Immediately after, 10 more channel tones sounded one after another. Jia. 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 Daoyin, 10 trembling. The magnificent sound vibrates, like the morning bell and the evening drum, resounding through the firmament. And as soon as this sound trembled fell, in the depths of the firmament, there was a series of Tao sounds again. Jia. 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 The sound of the Tao is like a spring thunder, endless, surging. This time it is 7 trembling. Together with the first time, a total of 18 Tao sounds trembled. At the moment when the 18 voices fell, suddenly, visions between heaven and earth were frequent, and I saw the sky falling, the golden lotus surging. From the ground, the dragon and phoenix appeared, the unicorn was auspicious. The Ruichi rose, the heavenly goddess danced, the petals fell, and endless visions of heaven and earth were born, colorful and beautiful. Countless people below were stunned. Looking at the scene in the void blankly, his body was straight and stunned. Stiff in place, his mouth was huge, stunned, and dumbfounded. Everyone was amazed by this splendid vision of heaven and earth, feeling that their brains were starved of oxygen, unbelievable, and their hands and lips were trembling. What's more, he sat on the ground with his butt, stunned and stunned. After a long time, everyone was finally able to come to their senses. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2aa54z8b. Suddenly, a whole row of neat gasps erupted on the scene. Shoo! Dao in 18 trembling. Shoo! Oh my god, is this true? Incredibly, in this world, in addition to the last time someone from the Taishan Dao sect induced Dao-in, there were still people who triggered Dao-in? And its 18 Taoists, far beyond the Taishan Dao sect, so terrifying. Nope. No, this is the one from the Taishan Dao sect. Besides him, I don't believe that there is anyone in this world who can trigger the 18 tremors of the Dao-in. Good. Definitely him. Oh my god, the sound of the word is 18, unheard of, unseen, is this legendary supreme pose? The words came out. In an instant, countless cultivators were drunk like a stick, their bodies trembled violently, and they couldn't say anything, supreme. It turned out that the 18 trembling of Dao-in was the supreme posture. This person was really terrifying, worthy of being a person of the Taishan Dao sect. At the same moment, Taishan Daozong. In the hidden scripture pavilion, Lin Wuwei and Su Lao suddenly sensed the movement of the outside world, their faces changed one after another, and their hearts were horrified. Elder Su, listen quickly. This is Dao-in, and it is Dao-in 18. Tremors. Huang Jiulong is really powerful, and he can become the supreme in the future. Lin Invincible was shocked and delighted, and his heart was beating wildly in his body. Elder Su's face was full of red light with excitement, and he slapped his thighs and was pleasantly surprised. Not bad, I didn't expect that my Tai Shan Dao sect could actually produce a Terran Supreme, which is gratifying. Gratifying. They already expected that Huang Jiulong should have obtained the peerless supreme treasure during this trip, and after absorbing it, he was elevated to the supreme posture in one fell swoop. As the two spoke, they walked out of the Tibetan scripture pavilion and stood above the clouds to watch. Looking around, I saw thousands of visions in the entire heavenly dome, golden lotuses surging from the ground, and endless visions of heaven and earth seemed to be singing for this future supreme, thousands of purples and thousands of reds, dazzling. At this time, many peak lords below also looked up at the sky, sighing in their hearts, and were greatly impacted. I thought we saints were great enough, but I didn't expect. Alas! What I said, this seat felt the emotions in his chest surge, and it was difficult to calm down, but I didn't expect that someone in this world could trigger the Dao-in 18 tremors, which is really shocking to the world. The voice of the saints was shocked, and a sense of unreality and an extreme sense of decadence surged in their hearts. Dao-in 18 trembling. This shock is indescribable. This upper limit is far beyond these saints. As for the various disciples of Jiufeng, they all stared at the endless visions in the sky at this time, stunned, their mouths trembling, and their shocked bodies were incomplete, and they couldn't make a sound for a long time. At the same time, all the forces of the host domain, many ancient families, ancient royal families, and ancient holy places, all saw the continuous vision of heaven and earth in the void at this time, and one by one, their hearts were terrified, cold sweat flowed, their minds were unstable, and their internal cultivation was shaken. Dowing 18 trembling, the posture of the Supreme, how many great generations have passed, is there finally a Supreme in this world? The patriarch of a primeval royal family was shocked in his heart. He actually guessed to some extent why there was such a terrifying lightning and thunder in Visher City recently. It must be that the next great world is coming. And now, suddenly, a future Supreme appeared. Could this be a change in providence? In other words, is this Supreme a man who came to kill and turn the tide for all races? At the same time, many holy places in the host domain erupted into huge tremors. Shoo! It's terrible. The Holy Lord of Chankuan Holy Land looked at the magnificent vision of heaven and earth in the void, and gasped, unable to calm down in his heart for a long time. As soon as he thought that the catastrophe was about to come, his face changed violently, and he was shocked. However, he quickly adjusted his emotions. Winter is coming, the Terminator is coming, and is he the savior? With this Supreme in place, this catastrophe may usher in a change. The high-level saints of the other holy places were all standing on their respective hills, looking up at the rich rhyme and visions above the heavenly dome, only to feel their hearts beating violently in their bodies, and their cultivation was shocked, and their faces were stunned and shocked. In this world, there is a person who can become the Supreme in the future. The shock brought by it was like a thunderbolt on a sunny day, bombarding everyone's hearts. Not only these holy places, but today, the host domain is shaking. Countless large and small forces were staring blankly at the heavenly dome, looking at the vision of the brilliant brilliance and thousands of rhymes circulating. Their eyes were dizzying, their hearts were shocked, and they were extremely shocked. Last time, the Dowing 10 trembling was terrifying enough, and today it was even more 18 tremors. How could this not shock them? Ruining City. Yi Qingyao was asleep, and was suddenly woken up by a sound like a morning bell and a drum. She suddenly woke up and said, "This is Dowing." She hurriedly pushed the door out, and immediately saw that many people were looking up at the sky blankly, and a sigh came out of her mouth. Dowing 18 trembling, what a terrifying person. Yes, such a terrifying person was met by us. It is really a blessing for 3 lives, a blessing for 3 lives. Listening to these voices, Yi Qingyao's heart became more and more shocked, and she also looked up. I saw thousands of rays of light in the sky, and the divine mist one after another, suspended in the sky dome like a shooting star, and more rich rules, and ordered together with the rhyme of heaven and earth, suspended in the void. And on that void, a figure in white clothes stands. The figure is floating, not stained with a trace of dust. A golden light wheel looms behind it, and the rules of heaven and earth around the body are like an avenue, turbulent, ethereal, holding his hands and overlooking the earth, as if asking, "Who is the Lord of the vast earth?" Phew! Yi Qingyao's pupils contracted violently. This? Is it really Dowing 18 tremors, Supreme? A future Supreme is born? She muttered in shock, and at this time, she suddenly saw something, and noticed that the white-cloaked figure seemed to be very familiar. White clothes, like peerless independence, feathering and ascending to the Immortals. Snap. She slapped her forehead and suddenly remembered. Isn't this the last time? The one that was in the void last time with that light gauze figure? She clearly remembered that when she first came to Ruining City to live in seclusion, she didn't have the power to fight in the void that night, and after going out, she saw two figures standing in the void, but now the light yarn is not there, only this white clothes. In the void. The momentum on Suchonga's body was rising day by step, and his cultivation soared like a straight line. Star Soul Realm is a heavy heaven. Star Soul Realm duo heaven. Star Soul Realm triple heaven. Star Soul Realm 7th heaven. Star Soul Realm 8th heaven. Star Soul Realm 9 heavens. Boom. Skyrocket. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2AA54Z8B. Keep skyrocketing. Star Ancestor Realm is a heavy heaven. Star Ancestor Realm triple heaven. Star Ancestral Realm 5 heavens. Star Ancestral Realm 6th heaven. Star Ancestral Realm 7th heaven. Star Ancestor Realm 9 heavens. In a short moment, his cultivation spanned 2 great realms in a row and reached the last realm of the Star Soul Realm, Star Ancestor. And the physical strength also grew in a straight line. 3.6 billion caddies. 3.7 billion caddies. 3.9 billion caddies. 4 billion caddies. Buzz. Suchonga slowly opened a pair of eyes, releasing a dazzling brilliance, like many stars in the sky reflected in the eyes. The sky was full of golden brilliance, divine majesty, as gorgeous as a martial god. Huh? Master? A glance swept down, and he suddenly found that Yi Qingyao was staring at him. Far away, she couldn't see clearly, but she seemed to be recalling, as if she was identifying, her eyes closed and opened, carefully recalling her figure. Su Changxinger waved his palm, snorted, and disappeared. The void left only a ripple like the surface of water, and those visions of heaven and earth also fell into nothingness. He headed for the place where the heavenly eagle sect was stationed. On the ground, seeing that the figure disappeared, Yi Qingyao suddenly realized something, and hurriedly entered the house to check. When she entered, she suddenly let out a scream. "Apprentice, where have you been?" 30 miles outside the city of Vishya, a flat place. Many forces have set up camp here, and at a glance, the banners are flying. And the forces from which they come from are written. At this time, in front of a camp, a mother and daughter came. And everyone in the camp here is still sighing at the vision of heaven and earth in the void. Shoo, it's terrible, Dowing trembles, and that white-cloaked figure is too strong. I really couldn't believe it, until I looked through the ancient books. I realized that it was a future supreme that could trigger 18 voices. My God, we have the privilege of catching a glimpse of the supreme. What an honor. Unbelievable, sighs came one after another, like an endless wave, wave after wave. Listening to the sighs around them, the mother and daughter felt a wave of admiration in their hearts. They had been coming towards the heavenly eagle sect just now, and on the way, they also saw the brilliant vision of heaven and earth, as well as the white cloaked figure in the void, and then the white-cloaked figure suddenly disappeared, and they could only withdraw their gaze. They were none other than the middle-aged woman in the alley just now, and her daughter. Mother, how good it would be if I could marry that immortal. The middle-aged woman's daughter recalled the scene just now in her mind, and her heart rippled. The middle-aged woman was ashamed of herself, let out a long sigh, shook her head sighed, alas, my mother understands your thoughts, but being a person is about recognizing yourself, such a strong person is something we can't look up to. Her daughter also understood this truth, her face turned a little red, and she was ashamed of herself. Mother, you are right, we and he are destined to be people from two worlds. After a long sigh, the mother and daughter both came to the Heavenly Eagle sect camp. This is for the marriage contract. To summarize simply, when the daughter of a middle-aged woman was 15 years old, she met an inner disciple of the Heavenly Eagle sect, and the two sides met each other, which was very eye-catching, but because they were not old enough to get married, the two parties made a marriage contract, and 3 years later, they chose an auspicious day to become married. Now it is 3 years later, and the daughter of the middle-aged woman has just turned 18 today, and she has reached the standard of reaching the standard of marriage. The mother and daughter were about to walk towards the camp when they were suddenly stopped by the guards. The guard made a face and said coldly, "Stop." "What for?" The middle-aged woman hurriedly put on a smiling face and said, "Trouble Immortals. To report, we are here to find Sut Song Sunaiman." Sut Song, it's the name of that inner disciple. When the guard heard Sut Song's 2 words, his attitude immediately became respectful and said, "2 of you, please wait." The middle-aged woman suddenly straightened her head and waved her hand, "Let's go." The guards left. In less than a moment, the guard returned, his attitude becoming cold and distant, and said, "I'm sorry, senior brother Su is not welcome to you, please come back." "Huh?" The middle-aged woman was shocked in her heart, even her daughter was shocked, and hurriedly asked, "This? Why is that? We have a marriage contract here." "No, why, if you don't welcome it, you don't welcome it. Where do you come from? Go back quickly." The guard was faintly impatient in his words. The middle-aged woman stopped working. She stomped her foot and waved her hand, took out the marriage contract, and shouted into the village from a distance, "Sut Song, why don't you see us? Do you know that our mother and daughter have traveled hundreds of kilometers? Their feet have worn a lot of blisters, and they were almost defiled, and finally arrived here, you can't miss it." The words fell, and a man in black walked out of the camp. The middle-aged woman's eyes lit up and said, "Why don't you see us? Have you forgotten what you said 3 years ago?" The man in black was Sut Song. Hearing this, he suddenly muffled his face, and said in a deep voice, "I have already seen you from a distance just now. To be honest, your daughter grew quite water spirit 3 years ago. How can this grow up and become crippled? I am not interested, go away." The middle-aged woman's heart sank, and she was suddenly anxious, and hurriedly pleaded, "Sunaiman, the marriage contract you made with my daughter 3 years ago, it is here in black and white, you can't abandon us. She came so far in order to climb the Immortals, as long as she hitched a ride with the inner disciple of the Heavenly Eagle sect, her identity would immediately usher in a rising tide, and she would no longer stay in the mortal world as a mediocre person." Sut Song was overwhelmed and said coldly, "I advise you not to entangle. Otherwise it will not be good for everyone." After that, he turned around and left directly, leaving only an indifferent back for the mother and daughter. "Sunaiman! Sunaiman!" The mother and daughter duo went crazy, grabbing the fence and refusing to leave. Boom! The guard's body shook, and the thick coercion raged like a sea of mountains, and said angrily, "If you don't go again, blame me for being ruthless." The middle-aged woman suddenly felt as if a Tarzan was crushed down above her. head, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale, and she almost couldn't bear to faint. The other party has clearly abandoned them, and all fantasies have become extravagant hopes, an empty one. The mother and daughter were in a gloomy mood and sad. In the end, the middle-aged woman let out a long sigh and could only retreat with her daughter in disappointment. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2aa54z8b. At this moment, a white-cloaked figure suddenly descended from the sky, fluttering lightly on the earth, like a heavenly god descending, surging with vast coercion around it, like a huge wave of the deep sea, one wave after another, like a brilliant heavenly power falling, pushing everything in the world. Huh? The mother and daughter were stunned, and felt that this figure was somewhat familiar. The next moment they reacted, isn't this the white-cloaked figure in the void? Just now? That is Future Supreme? Hey, mother, no, he's the one who saved us in the alley. Her daughter suddenly discovered something at this time, shocked and speechless. After saying this, the middle-aged woman suddenly remembered, this figure was dressed in white. Wasn't it the person who saved her mother and daughter? How could he? Boom. When it was too late, Suchanga didn't talk nonsense, waved his arm, and the immortal sword appeared in his hand, breaking through the air. Tear up. A beam of sword light flashed like white thunder, mighty, directly splitting the fence, tearing through the earth, and slashing through the entire heavenly Eagle sect camp. Many people around only saw the brilliant light flashing in front of them, followed by a violent roar, and then opened their eyes to see the earth collapse, torn apart by the sword light, forming a heavenly graben 10,000 feet deep. Shoo! Everyone gasped, isn't this the Future Supreme in the void just now? Plop! Plop! Many forces present knelt down and bowed down, many of them far surpassing the heavenly Eagle sect, bowing and worshipping. I have seen the seniors, I have seen the predecessors. A painful cry for mercy sounded within the heavenly Eagle sect, former senior, please stop. Sting. Suchanga slashed another sword. The sword light flew and was brilliant. When the holy soldiers pushed sideways, everything in the heavenly Eagle sect ceased to exist, only the ruins of the ground remained, even the corpses evaporated, all swept away by the sword, leaving no one behind. Suchanga snorted coldly, his heart moved, and a vast divine thought swept by inch, and where he passed, the earth cracked, the ditch collapsed, and soon swept across thousands of miles, without finding anyone related to the heavenly Eagle sect. All swept away by the sword. Immediately, he waved his big hand, and a lot of weapons, elixir spirit stones, and piles of white flowers suddenly flew out of the ruins. These were all trophies. Then, with a cold snort, he turned and left. There was no glance at the mother and daughter of the bird. The mother and daughter were almost sluggish the whole time, their breathing stopped, their brains were blank, and when they came back to their senses, they looked at his distant back, their lips twitched, and they wanted to cry. Without tears. Mom. He. It's really him. I also saw clearly, it was really him, this. The mother did something wrong. The middle-aged woman had mixed feelings, and said, my mother regrets that she is not the first time. Her daughter fell silent. Until a long time later, there was a long lament, Mother, I want to become a monk. P.S. If you have anything to say about the plot, you can leave a message here, and the little author will reply one by one when he sees it. A no man's land. Suchanga came here, took out half of the spirit stone, and soon awakened the Dark Soul Emperor. Senior, it's time to take the third chance, where is it? The Dark Soul Emperor's expression suddenly became solemn, and he said in a deep voice, that place is very terrifying, you better be mentally prepared. Don't accidentally fall. He worked hard for so long, and finally cultivated Suchonga to the point of small success, and he must not die halfway. Suchonga nodded and said, say. The Dark Soul Emperor looked up at the void, as if remembering some ancient memories and glory years, and said after a moment, there is the great horror of this trip, called Nuwa Miracle. Suchonga's pupils condensed slightly. Nuwa Miracle? Could it be that there is Nuwa in it? Yes. The Dark Soul Emperor nodded and said, the golden world, majestic and prosperous, Nuwa Miracle was the strongest force at that time. There lived the Nuwa family. There are tens of thousands of Nuwa in the golden world. They called the wind and rain, like the sky. But it is such a force, in the face of the Terminator of the era, like a drop in the ocean, instantly collapsed and disappeared. However, they seem to have used an ancient secret technique to open up another space, hiding there to steal their lives, and the connection point between that space and the Kanglan realm is an ancient well in Visha city. You listen to me, the reason why the Nuwa Miracle is terrifying is that any Nuwa in it is all immortal king level power. And the leader Nuwa is a quasi-emperor level powerhouse, named Qingling Xuanu. You should know why Qingling Xuanu only has quasi-emperor level cultivation. Because today's emperor is not allowed to have a great emperor. I won't talk about her original cultivation, it's meaningless, I only say the point. There are many Nuwa under her seat, and these Nuwa are divided into 3 types: 1. Spirit Rune Nuwa, 2. Law Nuwa, 3. Bottle Nuwa. Spirit Rune Nuwa has great powers. The earth shakes between the hands of the hand, the sun and the moon lose their color, and they control the 4 divine powers: 1. Hellfire, 2. Running Thunder Spell, 3. Mount Tai Topping, 4. Water flooding Golden Mountain. Any divine power released is almost heaven-wide, terrifying to the extreme. And Law Nuwa is only good at one kind of magical power, called good and evil rewarded. This magical power is also divided into 2 types, one is good reward, the other is evil reward, but most of the cases are evil reward. She will penetrate your heart, find the dark place in your heart, such as you have done an inconspicuous bad thing, she will magnify this dark thing infinitely to carry out evil retribution. Good retribution is not harmful, and no one will die. But the evil retribution is extremely dangerous, and no one can escape under the evil retribution. Gain. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2AA54Z8B. The Dark Soul Emperor's breathing became sharp, gains evil retribution. Ignores cultivation, ignores defense, ignores armor, and is invincible under the saint. That is to say, once you cultivate under the avatar saint, no matter how terrifying your physical body is, no matter how strong the armor on your body, you will definitely die in battle as soon as you report it. Suchonga frowned and said, it's so terrifying? What do you think? The Dark Soul Emperor took a slight breath and said, back then, in the Golden World, tens of thousands of immortal king level powerhouses joined forces to kill the Nuwa Miracle, and as a result, they were killed on the spot by evil retribution. Suchonga asked, the first 2 Nuwa are so terrifying, then isn't the third one even more terrifying? You guessed wrong. The Dark Soul Emperor shook his head and said, the clean bottle Nuwa is not the Nuwa who is in charge of killing, but the main one who Saves people. She has a Yanglu jade clean bottle in her hand, which contains a bottle of Nirvana Emperor blood. This Emperor blood is extremely terrifying. A drop can bring the dead Nuwa back to life, but it is ineffective against other ethnic groups. Suchanga understood. And the great creation technique? The Dark Soul Emperor immediately said. In the hands of the Qingling Xuannu, if you want to get it, you must go to the Nuwa miracle, but now is not the time. After a blaze of incense time, many forces in Ruining City will pass. You better wait for them to die before going. Don't be brainless. As soon as he finished saying this, the figure of the Dark Soul Emperor darkened, and he lost his voice. It's not good, it's overdrawn again. Before he finished speaking, he fell directly into a deep sleep. Suchanga muttered, this Nuwa miracle, is it really so terrifying? It's not that he didn't read the Hong Wilderness Stream novel in his previous life, where Nuwa created the Terran race, the virgin of the Terran race, her cultivation was boundless, and the universe was shattered in a single thought. And the universe repeated itself. And this Nuwa miracle, all of them are Nuwa? I have to say, it's outrageous. The world I'm wearing is also too powerful. Could it be that the strongest world in the heavens, born at the end of others? Suchanga guessed a little. Speechlessly. The next moment, he directly awakened the Dark Soul Emperor. The Dark Soul Emperor said with an unlovable face, you let me die, what are you doing to let me die and live? I am about to make you tossed to death. Suchanga smiled and said, Senior, what is the Kanglan realm we are in, and why is it so terrifying? Is it the big world? The Dark Soul Emperor smiled and said, don't you know? Oh, I forgot, when you photographed me on the black market, you were just a small golden body realm cultivator, and it was normal not to know. Then I will tell you, the Kanglan realm we are in is the peak of the heavens. Also known as the center of the universe, you can also understand it as the upper realm, and the lower realm has 3,000 worlds, and the 3,000 worlds are divided into the middle 1,000 worlds and the small 1,000 worlds, and those worlds will have ants flying up through various means every year, but their kind of ascension, in our ascension period, looks like a pediatric, and their ascension in our eyes should be called death. Crossing. Suchanga was generally clear. Sure enough, he stood at the end as soon as he was born. The Dark Soul Emperor said, many nether realms belong to the same universe. Like us, and they also belong to the same era in the timeline, whether they are era terminators or era terminators, whenever they come, those worlds will be liquidated together. Ruining City. A figure streaked by, entered the city, and soon returned to the door. It was the returning Suchanga. Just as he was about to enter the door, he suddenly glanced sideways and found someone waiting for him by the door. That person just now, is that you? This is a woman, her face is excited, but also shocked, her pupils are dilated, and she has the expression of seeing the sky fall and the ground sink like a doomsday scene. Suchanga glanced at her, thought for a moment, and finally nodded and admitted, it's me. You actually. So powerful. The woman stepped forward, her body trembling slightly, and the light gauze on her body was like a morning mist, flowing with the night breeze. Suchanga smiled lightly and said, it's average. Brother Su, you are too modest. The woman was not someone else, it was Zhong Liyun. She never thought that the weak person she disdained to bully at that time was such a powerful person. Dao Yin 18 trembling. Originally, she thought that Brother Su was already strong enough, but she never dreamed that he was a supreme posture. Who else in the world can compare? A future supreme is actually standing in front of me at this moment. Her heart beat faster, her body jumped rapidly, her breathing was sudden and rapid, she couldn't believe it, and her face was full of disbelief. A wave of worship and admiration also rose in his heart, and the eyes that looked at Suchanga flowed with a blazing light, like a mountain on its back. A scene stopping, and his body was completely uncontrollable, trembling and trembling. Suchanga didn't care how she was, and with a push of her palm, she was ready to push the door in. But at this time, he was stopped by Yunchang. Yunsong felt in his arms for a while, took out a white robe, and said softly, "Everyone saw you just now, your master should have seen it, but they can't be recognized. You change this dress, otherwise it's easy to show the stuffing." Su Changa nodded, and then took the white robe and took a look, only felt that it was extremely light, silky to the touch, it was woven from fine silk. Extremely light. He went to the side corner and quickly changed it. In the process of dressing, he suddenly found that this white robe was not like those goods in the shop, but like a woman's own hand-weaving, every needle and thread, every cloth knot, as dense as silk weaving, very careful. What did he expect and asked, "Yunchang, you sewed this dress?" Yunchang lowered his head and said in a voice like a mosquito, Su. Changa didn't say anything more, pushed the door, and entered. When I entered the door, I saw Master Venerable standing in the courtyard, looking at the sky as he did just now, his crystal peach blossom eyes turning around, as if he was thinking about something, thoughtful. Seeing that Suchanga had returned, she jerked back to her senses and said, "Apprentice, where did you go just now?" Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2aa54z8b. Without waiting for Suchanga to reply, she walked over directly, looked him straight up and down, and asked in a deep voice, "That person in the sky just now, is it you?" "No," Yunsong came over and smiled, "I couldn't sleep just now, so I came to find him to go out for a walk, and suddenly saw the situation in the void on the way." Yi Qingyao couldn't help but shake her head. Is this, yes, or no? That night, the two powerful fighting methods in the void, the apprentice was not there at that time. As for this time, the apprentice was not there. It's also too coincidental. And even more coincidentally, the figures of the two times are very similar too. The apprentice, although they are only figures, they can't see the face clearly, but they are 9 points similar, is it or not? She suddenly noticed the light gauze that Yunchang was wearing. However, this light gauze cloud robe has already been changed and replaced with another one, which is obviously different from the one worn during the fight that night. She was about to think deeply, but suddenly at this moment, many houses in the entire ruining city were lit up one after another, and one by one the forces led the disciples under the seat to move, and there was a roar on the street, accompanied by the sound of war horses neighing. What's going on? Yi Qingyao's brows furrowed. Looking through the door, I saw that many forces gathered a large number of people and horses in the middle of the night, holding torches and driving to the city of Vishur, and the flames were countless for a while, and the lights were bright at night. Yunchang explained, well, at noon the day before yesterday, these sectarian forces gathered at an inn in the city to discuss rushing to Vishur city tonight, and I also went to listen to it at that time. They said that those visions of heaven and earth first came from Vish city, and there were probably some secrets hidden there, so they finalized the time and joined forces to investigate tonight. Suchanga slammed his head and realized that it was now after a blaze of incense. I have to say that the means of the Fate Master are really strong, and he can play everything in the world. Let's go too, Yi Qingyao said. Suchanga decisively stopped and said, Master, let them go first, we are not in a hurry. Yi Qingyao didn't understand why, and said, Why do you say this? Suchanga said, In short, it's right not to go, the vision of heaven and earth is very abnormal, and they may have a blood and light disaster when they go. Yi Qingyao nodded, That's right. If something goes wrong, there will be a demon, and anyone can see that the phenomenon of lightning and thunder is not a good thing. Sure enough, soon after, there was a violent scream from the city of Vishur. Like the screams of the unjust souls of hell, the sound was terrible, the ghosts cried wolves, and the thunder and lightning in the void suddenly became more violent, like a doomsday omen. Soon, the news came back. The major forces that went to Visha City tonight searched Visha City not long ago, and found an ancient well, and as soon as they entered the ancient well, they saw a sharp sword light as fast as thunder flashed, followed by great water, fire, Mount Tai, running thunder, and all kinds of terrifying gods like dazzling martial gods. Everyone died in battle. It was so fast that no one saw how they died, as if they had been erased alive, and there were no bodies left. Now in the entire city of Bish, no one dares to approach the ancient well. Silent. Events keep fermenting. Like a tornado, it soon swept through thousands of miles. Many behemoths do not believe in evil, and when they hear the news, they are about to find out why. The more dangerous it is, the more symbolic this opportunity is not to be missed. The greater the danger, the greater the reward. For a while, even the people who did not dare to approach the ancient well again regained their confidence and were eager to enter with these forces. These people enter and die quickly. Once inside, there was a ghostly scream, and then there was no sound. Subsequently, the ancestors behind these forces left the customs one after another and rushed here, but the front foot entered the dry well, and the back foot of heaven and earth lost the breath of this person, as if disappeared from the world. News gets around. One after another, the voices were sent out to the outside world, and the people behind the forces of all parties came out to reinforce one after another. Time goes by, and 3 days pass. The forces of all parties who rushed here did not decrease, but increased, more and more. The lowest were the strong people who started in the Sendai realm. And the power of the Purple Mansion was even more numerous, tens of thousands of people joined here, but they did not dare to enter rashly. On the 4th day, Suchanga didn't want to wait any longer. Originally, it was prepared that everyone would enter after death, but these forces were too troublesome. The dead small came to the old, and the dead old came back again, endlessly. Yi Qingyao couldn't wait any longer at this time, and took Suchanga to Bish City. Yunchang also followed. When I arrived at the city of Bish, I saw that all the forces were strong, gathering in front of a dry well one after another, and the black pressure crushed a human head. Someone else is there. The ancestor of the sect Taishang turned his head and looked, only to see 2 women and a man coming one after another, and his face was suddenly happy. The 2 Zifu powers, not bad, this time the odds of victory have increased. As for Suchanga on the side, he wore a wide hat with a huge brim that covered his face. This Taishang old ancestor did not recognize it, and no one present saw through that he was the future supreme who destroyed the heavenly Eagle sect. Yi Qingyao looked around, and saw that there were many sects and families around, and behind these people were followed by the guardians of various holy places in the Kanglan realm, and it seemed that the background was not small. Guys, Fong Kai Hong Wuzong Taishang old ancestor entered, it was gone in less Then a quarter of an hour, who else wants to go in next? An old man in the audience spoke. There was silence all around. The ancestor of Hong Wuzong Taisheng is a great power who has soared to the peak, and he actually went in and disappeared directly? Who dares to enter this? I'll come. A protector of the Holy Land came out, a middle-aged man with a resolute face like a knife and an axe, and when the words fell, he jumped into the well with a knife. In an instant, there was a terrifying sound of shattering bones from the ancient well, accompanied by hysterical screams, and the aura of this protector disappeared from the world. Shoo! Countless people were in an uproar, and their faces changed color in unison. That Tao protector is an immortal king-level powerhouse, so one face is gone? Someone was shocked. Everyone. The old man waved his hand and said, "It's better to pick out the powerful ones, work together, and enter together. When a person goes in, it is inevitable that the strength is weak, and it is different when many strong people rush up." I agree. Immediately, someone agreed. Soon, the old man named 30 people, all of whom were the ancestors of some ancient families, as well as some guardians sent by the Holy Land. Yi Qingyao and Yun Cheng were also picked. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2AA54Z8B. Yi Qingyao turned her head and explained to Su Chang'e, "You stay outside. Don't enter." Su Chang'e nodded helplessly. Zhong Liyun smiled and said nothing. Not long after, everyone was ready to jump into the well. Yi Qingyao only felt a dizzy feeling in his head, his body was falling rapidly, and soon the soles of his feet landed on the ground, and his eyes seemed to be teleported to a mysterious area. In front of him was a dark passage, and deep in the passage was a stone door, on which were engraved many ancient totems such as the heavenly god totem, Nuwa totem, and exotic beast totem. What is this place? Yun Song looked a little nervous. Buzz. 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 One after another, the closed eyes slowly opened, respectively, the ancestors of many ancient families and the protectors of the Holy Land. At this moment, the ancestors of the martial artists opened their eyes and scanned the surroundings. Their pupils shrank sharply, and they exclaimed, "No wonder, it turned out to be them." Looking at the stone gate from afar, stood 3 Nuwa, the upper body of the person, the lower body of the snake. It is the 3 kinds of Nuwa of spirit: runes, law, and clean bottle, and there are many spiritual runes suspended around the spirit rune Nuwa. The strange light is brilliant. The law Nuwa is wearing gold armor, holding a bronze sword. As for the clean bottle Nuwa, holding the clean bottle, the treasure is majestic. There were no aura fluctuations coming out of them. Yes, it's just a sense of oppression that almost breaks apart. Die. Suddenly, the law Nuwa shouted violently, and the long sword came out of its sheath, cut through the long sky, and slashed at the ancestor of the martial family. Good and evil are rewarded. Evil. Here it comes. The martial artist old ancestor flicked his sleeve robe. A powerful momentum swept out, and many runes appeared on the surface of his body. Standing here like a god of war, a blood-colored spear appeared in his hand, broke through the air, and fought away. Click. The offensive of the 2 sides slashed together fiercely. The blood-colored spear was directly broken, and it was shattered by the sword of the law Nuwa, and the evil retribution was not reduced by half a point. The momentum was surging, and a sword was cut on the neck of the martial ancestor. The ancestor of the martial artist, bang, on the spot, exploded into a blood mist. And the blood mist solidified and still maintained the state of the figure. It seemed that the ancestor of the martial family did not know that he had died. And before he died, he interpreted the brilliance of that moment. Die! Lan Yua shouted again, raising her sword to kill the crowd. Everyone was like a great enemy in an instant, and they all waved their hands to sacrifice their respective Tao weapons and divine weapons, and in an instant, the surrounding light was radiant. One by one, the big golden bells were suspended in the air and buzzed and bloomed with divine brilliance, and there were more monks who sacrificed the magic pestle, and a phantom shadow of the Buddha emerged, singing in a burst of Sanskrit music, entrenched for 9 days, and the strong defensive momentum was like Mount Tai protecting in front of him, unbreakable. Even if the terrifying momentum of the combined efforts of all people was not aimed at anyone, it was only out of defense, but the oppression of the breath was like a rock smashing into people's hearts in ancient and modern times. Lan Yua did not blink, a sword cut out, the space collapsed in an instant, cracking a huge abyss black hole. Many ancestor protectors ushered in evil retribution, only felt that a sword in front of them swung head-on, as if cut in the depths of the soul, an irresistible force to destroy. The great ding golden bell immediately shattered, sparks splashed, the ultimate defense under. This sword did not even hold out for a quarter of an hour, and then this evil retribution was slashed fiercely on everyone. Boom! Boom! One sword at a time. The Lan Yua is like entering no man's land, and everywhere she passes, evil is full of rewards, as if she is starting a massacre. Not a breath. Countless deaths were lost. In less than 2 breaths, all of them died. Lan Yua took the sword and turned to look at the only 2 remaining women. It was Yi Qingyao and Zhong Liyun. Lan Yua glanced at them, her face was expressionless, and she swung her sword to repay them evilly. The blade swept across, pointing straight at Yunchang. P.S. Thank you, Yang Zhihao, from Weihai Zia Qingdao, for the milk tea. Yunchang. Yi Qingyao's face changed, and he hurriedly sacrificed a Dao instrument, and in an instant, a mysterious light rushed out from the palm, turning into a four-sided ancient shan-colored furnace in the wind, hanging down endless yin and yang Dao Qi. Runes were all over, the light bloomed, and the golden particle Dao rhyme was sprayed out. It was the ultimate Dao instrument yin yang furnace found in Longling grottos, and in an instant the yin yang furnace protected in front of Yun Xiang, casting an indestructible defense. Like a majestic great wall, solid as gold, magnificent momentum. What a strong defense! Sensing the defense forged in front of him, Yunchang was overjoyed. The yin yang furnace hummed gently, spraying out golden chain of order, and there was a remnant of the sacred and majestic ancient dragon aura, intertwined with a cloud of yin and yang Dao Qi, all kinds of defenses forged together, like a real majestic great wall, blocking in front of Yunchang, copper wall and iron wall. Mount Tai could not be taken seriously. Die. Lan Yua's eyes were indifferent, and an evil retribution struck out, cutting through the yin and yang furnace. Buzz. The yin and yang furnace hummed violently, as if groaning in pain, and the surrounding sound of shrill, gold and iron clashing sounded like a landslide tsunami. The angry sea was raging, and it was deafening. Click, this sword was like chopping melons and cutting vegetables, slashing straight at the yin-yang furnace. The yin-yang furnace could not withstand it, and it was broken inch by inch, and the massive yin-yang Dao Qi and the ancient dragon Qi dissipated in an instant, and the magnificent and solid great wall, scattered on the spot, shattered with a shot, and exploded. And the power of this evil retribution has not decreased, not even half a point has not weakened. This sword is aimed at Yunchang. Everything along the way is like an ant falling apart. God blocks and kills God, Buddha blocks and kills Buddha, and no one is invincible under the saint. My life is resting, Yun. Xiang's eyelids jumped violently, and his heart was like knocking over a bucket 7 times and 8 times. He thought that the ultimate Dao weapon could block this blow, but who knew that he couldn't even hold a face, and quickly gritted his teeth, and a Xian iron épée appeared in his hand, rising out of its sheath, and straddling in front of him. Buzz! The épée trembled, releasing the brilliant sword intent. The void burst out of inches of ripples. In an instant, 1 minute 223 points of everything. In a blink of an eye, thousands of épée phantoms appeared in front of him, with the wave of the palm, reforging the Great Wall. Ants don't measure themselves. Lan Yuan looked indifferent, swung the bronze sword. A sword slashed, like a destruction and decay, instantly crushed. Thousands of heavy swords, sparks splashed, the gorgeous sword intent under the evil retribution like a fragile straw. A blink of an eye shattered, and turned into nothingness. Finally, this sword smashed through the layers of defense, and came to Yun Xiang's body. Oops! Yun Xiang's face changed wildly, looking at the rapidly approaching bronze sword in front of him. The blade on the blade seemed to come from eternal ago, and before it was approached, he could directly feel the indestructible sharpness, like a sword breaking through eternity, and his heart trembled twice. Good and evil are rewarded, evil is rewarded. It seems that I have never done anything bad in my life. I am worthy of the sky. Why is it a bad reward? Yun Sung was horrified. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2aa54z8b. The next moment, the evil retribution was in sight. Yun Xiang's pupils shrank suddenly, and a memory suddenly appeared in his mind. When he was 7 years old, he left the palace and met a little beggar outside, who just thought he was ragged and funny, and out of mischievous playfulness, he kicked over his money-begging porcelain bowl, and the porcelain bowl swayed and flew out, hit the wall and shattered, and scattered some coins on the ground, a mess. Out of respect and humility, the little beggar took care of the porcelain bowl flawlessly, and hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed uncontrollably. This scene crossed my mind. The sea evolves into a mulberry field. What is clearly a trivial matter is infinitely magnified today, and has become the root of evil. Die. The voice of the Lan Yuan sounded in her ears. Immediately after, the bronze sword approached, carrying the indestructible divine power, like a judgment, and slashed in front of his eyes. Bang! Abrupt. Mars burst out, a divine weapon appeared in front of him. A sword blocked the evil retribution, but it was also fleeting and directly broken, exploded into a spark, sideways swept away that it turned out to be Yiqingyao. She threw out the Lingxi divine sword to block a bad retribution for Yunchang. The Lingxi divine sword as a heaven-level divine weapon didn't even hold a breath, and it exploded on the spot. Poof! Yun Xiang flew out upside down and fell heavily to the ground under the powerful shock, but finally recovered a life under the evil retribution. Go on. Yiqingyao took out a 9 young golden chalcedony spirit fruit, obtained from the dragon scale grotto, waved the spirit fruit and flew towards Yun Xiang, and suddenly the rich healing power was accompanied by the aroma. Yun Xiang instantly doubled her spirits, and the pain in her body recovered by half, but the next moment she suddenly opened her mouth wide, her face changed again and again, and her voice was hoarse. Quick! Come on! Huh? Yi Qingyao's heart sank, and before he could leave, he looked up and saw an evil retribution coming towards him, and in an instant, memories crossed in his mind, and before the memory crossed the bronze sword, he was approaching the front door, and the breath of death rushed to his face. Her pupils dilated, and she lost her voice in horror. Buzz. At this moment, the void rippled, and a figure in white walked out. Buzz. The space fluctuated, and a familiar figure walked out. Yi Qingyao was stunned, and looked back, only to see that figure dressed in white, like an ancient sword immortal, descending from the 9 heavens to mortal dust, and suddenly like a primeval god-king revived from the primeval period, stepping through the chains of the long river of time and space and landing here. He didn't speak. Only indifferently looked at the rapidly approaching bronze sword, raised his hand and pointed a finger. The rolling rhyme surged like a tide, and the momentum like the explosion of the sun tore the heaven and earth, gushing out. Boom! A big sword like a green dragon appeared in his hand, breaking through the air and slashing towards the bronze ancient sword. Bang! Bang bang! When the green dragon moon sword slashed at the bronze sword, the surrounding space suddenly could not withstand the downward collapse directly, resulting in a fault, like a void black hole-like particle. Space was opened up, and a terrifying shock wave swept in all directions like a tornado. Back off. Suchanga pushed Yi Qingyao away with a palm and attacked the law Nuwa alone with a bad retribution. It was at this time that Yi Qingyao noticed that the white-cloaked figure was still wearing a mask on his face, and his divine sense swept away, could not peek into his true face. Boom! The endless shockwave burst out in all directions, the air flow roared, the Vinayan Nuwa bronze sword broke, taking a step back, while Su Chang'e did not move, but a crack appeared in the moon knife in his hand. Ignoring the green dragon Moon Dao, who had cultivated to kill the immortal king strongly, he encountered the invincible good and evil under the transformation saint, and the two sides actually fought a tie. Well, that's awesome. Yi Qingyao was stunned. At the next moment, Yi Qingyao suddenly discovered something and said, "No. This is not a tie, this is defeating Nuwa." Yun Tsang stood up, a brilliant light crossed his eyes, and said, "We are saved." Die. La Nuwa raised her hand and pointed a finger, and the broken bronze sword recovered undamaged in an instant, waved her arm, and slashed at Su Chang'e with another evil retribution. Su Chang'e's heart moved, the demon god martial art slowly ran in the body. Under the blessing of this martial art, it can fight and raise the war, and the stronger the war, it is just suitable for the current situation. In the blink of an eye, a blow of evil retribution came like a heaven and earth crack, but when it met the green dragon moon knife, the rolling shock wave exploded again, almost blowing the passage apart, and the stone gate shook violently, and the rumbling sound continued to sound. But in an instant, the two sides fought dozens of rounds. This Nuwa, it's really difficult. Su Chang'e dodged an oncoming evil report. His pupils couldn't help but condense. He was worthy of being a strong man in the previous world, even if he used the demon god martial technique and the Moon Dao for a while, he couldn't even stalemate. Here, the more the La Nuwa fights, the more frightened, the more incredible it is. There are people in this world who can bear her evil retribution, and not only carry it once, but also faintly have the upper hand. Incredible. This is incredible. This person is too strong. I'll help you. The spirit rune Nuwa in the distance drank deeply and joined the battle, only to see her big sleeves flicked, and the spirit runes suspended around her body were turbulent in an instant, spewing out a cloud of water. wind and fire chi, mighty, and horizontally pressed. In an instant, the sky and the earth were dark, the sun and the moon were lightless. A large opening appeared in the void, and the flood spread rapidly, like the heavenly river pouring down, and the surging waves seemed to transfer the entire ocean, covering the sky and rushing through. Tarzan overwhelms. Immediately after, with a wave of the palm of the spirit rune Nuwa, a majestic Mount Tai covered the earth, fell from the sky, and fell in the sky according to Suchanga. And the next moment, she raised her hand and pointed again, and the void suddenly rushed to thunder, lightning and thunder, rolling arc. If the end of the world arrived, this space instantly transformed into a sea of void. Thunder, one after another running thunder poured down, the airflow was sizzling, the arc flickered, and it fell towards Suchanga. Hellfire. Like a red fire from hell spreading out from the ground, the scorching air flow sounded, but it did not affect the water flooding the golden mountain. And the four divine powers rushed up and besieged Suchanga. Suchanga glanced at it, and saw that these four magical powers were extremely gorgeous, which can be described as every second. It was really a fire that burned the Dragon King temple, and the special effects funds were burning loudly, and he saw the bottle Nuwa in the distance looking at all this indifferently, and did not seem to intend to make a move, as if he was already a dead person in her eyes. Does this think I'm going to die? He shook his head indifferently. One person fighting two women, what? Buzz. A brand new great sword appears. Quaint, vast. It blooms with a vast and sacred breath. There is also a quasi-saint level breath flowing, swallowing mountains and rivers, and pulling up the heavens and the earth. Read more novels for free on our website, tinyurl.com/2AA54Z8B. Ugh. Suchanga slashed through with a sword, and the void suddenly split in two, cracking a wormhole with bright stars. Through the wormhole, you can see the ghostly endless hell behind. This sword is the underworld remnant moon sword. The void passage opened, and those four mighty divine powers were instantly devoured and disappeared. Bang! Suchanga kicked Lan Yu off fiercely, and the terrifying physical power instantly kicked the law in, and then the wormhole closed, and the Lan Yu soul returned to hell. When Yi Qingyao trembled all over, shocked, and lost her voice. At this time, he also noticed that this white-cloaked figure was no different from the sex at this close range, and suddenly thought of something. His pupils instantly dilated, and he trembled and exclaimed, "You! Are you an apprentice?" Suchanga glanced back and said, "I said no, do you believe it?" As soon as the words fell, the bottle Nuwa made a move. A drop of Nirvana Emperor blood that was rich to the extreme was born, overflowing from the Yonglu Jade Jing bottle, and in an instant, time was reversed, and the soul of the Lan Yuwa above the ground returned, and a figure rose and fell. It was the Lan Yuwa. Yi Qingyao suddenly chuckled in her heart. It's useless. Lan Yuwa stared at Suchanga, her eyes were indifferent, and said coldly, "You are very strong, but for the infinitely resurrected Nuwa family, it is like a drop in the ocean, not worth mentioning." Suchanga waved his hand and said, "I just want to enter the Nuwa miracle." Lan Yuwa said expressionlessly, "Unless you can kill us." Suchanga's eyes condensed slightly. "Don't you die?" The Jing bottle Nuwa moved and blocked the door, saying, "The emperor fell into the world. There is no great emperor in the world, even if you are strong. To the apex of this great world, you will not be able to enter here." Senior Yunchang suddenly opened his mouth and persuaded, "The Nuwa clan is too terrifying, or else give up." right? The corner of Yi Qingyao's mouth swept a touch of bitterness, and she sighed. Yes, it is already a blessing to be able to get out alive. Su Chang'e looked at the door, and then looked directly at the Jing bottle. Nuwa, what if I am a future supreme? Supreme? 3 Nuwa pupils constricted. Su Chang'e did not speak again. Flick your sleeves. With a bang, a vast and mighty force like a river of stars rushed out of his body. The supreme breath was surging, and in an instant, endless rhymes, rules, and order were one after another, like brilliant shooting stars in the night sky, brilliant and dazzling, setting him off like a god in the sky. Majestic and sacred, intertwined with Tao rhyme and blazing light. And behind that rose a golden light wheel. The rules and order were endless. And the divine haze was like the primeval true God standing. The 3 Nuwa suddenly looked at each other. This turned out to be a future supreme? After a while, they collected the sword, collected the talisman, collected the clean bottle in their palms, bent down and knelt down in unison, and said, respectfully, Feng is when I am offended, you can go in. As the words fell, the closed door gently opened and closed, a deep breath was revealed, and when I looked up, I saw that inside the miracle, there were rules and orders, heaven and earth rhyme, like thousands of rays of light blooming, and it was like a natural enveloping in the miracle, and the rule order was even more like a road surrounding. The rich Tao rhyme was like a rich floral fragrance, and if you practiced in it for a moment, it was enough to withstand the past 1,000 days of practice. It's so good. Su Chang'e put the sword into its sheath, then turned his head to look at Yuncheng and sent a transmission. Yuncheng suddenly realized and nodded. Then, Su Chang'e took a step and stepped into the door. Wait a minute. Yi Qingyao suddenly shouted, stretched out a pair of hands to keep it, and said, You. Are you really, apprentice? Yuncheng spoke, You think wrong, he is not. Feng. Kai Su Chang'e handed over a look, she realized it, and wanted to help him hide it. And at this time, Yuncheng also suddenly remembered that when the void was fighting that night, Su Chang'e had told her that it was not yet the time when the master knew, and as for when the time was ripe, he had mentioned it intentionally or unintentionally when they were together for the past 4 days. Tournament. P.S. The computer is broken, it is being repaired at the maintenance point, and I said to get it tomorrow. These 2 chapters were written with difficulty. With mobile phones, very sorry. Tomorrow when I get the computer, I will compensate everyone for a 2-in-1 chapter. I'm really sorry.